Second.
And I have a second. All those in favor? Oh, we have public comment. Sorry. Okay, just real quick. Please note that the consent agenda is a one-vote item. Therefore, the board may limit each member of the public to 3 minutes to comment on the entire consent agenda. We ask that you please indicate the item you will be speaking on. Thank you, and we have 6 speakers at this time.
Our first speaker will be Patrick Rivera, speaking on items D, E, F, and G for 3 minutes.
That's 4D, 4D, E, F, and G, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was just kind of concerned about, so you guys are getting cars. Okay, you need cars for the district. I get that. That's no problem. But it just seems like for 2-passenger, I mean, am I supposed to talk before you guys talk about it? Is that what's going on? I'm supposed to talk about it first?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys are spending like $180,000 for 2-passenger electrical vehicles? $180,000. I'm just wondering, did you guys quote this out to anybody, or that sounds like Mercedes-Benz Sprinter. Here's another Pro Master you can get for 85. I'm sorry, for you're paying 58. You can get one for 48, 10 grand cheaper. Again, it just seems like wasteful. And then you're gonna get a Silverado, a Silverado for 75 grand. You can get here. I even put a Hemi in this one, a Hemi Bighorn Ram 1500. You can get it for about 48 grand. So again, I'm just wondering. You know, it's waste. The monies that we can save, we can get tutors for the kids to raise their grades. You know, as you can see, well, she's not showing you, but as you can see, our grades are plummeting. We've talked about, you know, raising the scores for the students, and it doesn't seem like anyone is interested in that. I've been here coming here for about 1.5 years, never addressed grades. So that's all I had to say. Thanks.
Speaker Patty Kay.
Good evening. Okay, I just had a quick question on 4W, please, because it's not familiar to me, although I believe it's was under Mercedes Levy that explained that it had been in the district for 10 years. Is that right? Was that you, Mercedes? I don't have all the printout for me. On SMAA funding and participation with Orange County. And ratification of school-based Medi-Cal administrative activities participant agreement with Orange County. And, you know, I understand that people need services. I do. I just do not understand how the school gets so involved in criteria for Medi-Cal. And I'm very concerned about it being a social instrument and getting into people's medical records, which the whole agreement says the district can, to qualify these students. I think that's a real violation, personally, of HIPAA, and I don't think it's necessary. I'm wondering what the ulterior motive is. It says the goal of SMAA is to improve availability and accessibility of Medi-Cal services to Medi-Cal eligible and potentially eligible individuals, I guess meaning students, and their families. This is a school for education. It's not a socializing agent for Medi-Cal. So I guess my question is, I'd like to have some questions answered outside of the meeting tonight, and I don't know if I go to Mercedes or who. I need to understand this program because you're assessing students to be a Medi-Cal recipient. What business does the Department of Education have in that? I mean, granted, if you want to do that outside the school hours or whatever, maybe, but I think it's a distraction. And the term on this that you're approving tonight in your consent is July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. So again, I don't understand why you're voting on this tonight when it was agreed upon. So anyway, I have a lot of questions, understandably. I don't know if anyone else does, but why are we in the business of qualifying people and families for Medi-Cal? Would that be an appointment with you, Mercedes? Okay, thank you.
The next three speakers, item X, Paul Hanish, Joseph Cantor, and then Nicole Watson. Item X. 4X.
Board members, as someone who came from the left, was a vice president of Veterans for Peace in Los Angeles, I had to leave the left behind. I'm still anti-war today, but I don't recognize the left. Those in the peace movement were mostly decent people, but today's radical left is bent on dividing Americans based on race, gender, and economic status. And this is anathema to me, someone who grew up under the philosophy of Martin Luther King in uniting Americans. So the left is at war with science by using political activism to push its agenda rather than reason and facts, and seeking to indoctrinate our children and treat parents as the enemy and the state as God. We are seeing a social contagion of gender confusion, especially in teen girls, of rapid onset gender dysphoria. Typically, gender dysphoria affects about 0.1% of young males, but it's exploding amongst the most mentally stressed population, teen girls. In some schools, 15 to 20% of the teen girls are expressing gender confusion without a prior history. And as someone who has sat on your side of the desk as a school board president, I know what the superintendent thinks of you. She thinks she has to manage you, and that's not the case. You were elected to represent the citizens of Oceanside, and you'll be removed by those citizens if you continue to allow dysfunction and malpractice to occur in this district. You have just two functions. You have a fiduciary duty to make sure the school district remains solvent and to ensure that the children are learning and not falling behind. This district has failed miserably on both accounts because the superintendent is more interested in advocating adult fetishes to minors and denying parental rights. We can teach children to be kind to one another without indoctrinating them. It's time to put our science hats on and start asking tough questions of Miss Vitale. Will this controversial club require parent permission? Will you allow Christian clubs on campus? What are the school's liabilities if a child is indoctrinated in the club or affirmed by a campus counselor to transition without getting parental approval? So is this a constitutional battle you want to open up this school district to? Let our kids be kids. Will you be an ally of parents and all
Thank
students?
you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm here tonight as a member of your community and a former student of the Oceanside School District. And it was recently brought to my attention that you guys are under consideration as the Oceanside School Board to consider the incorporation of an LGBT acceptance club on Oceanside school campuses. And I'm here tonight to address this topic as it is a topic that is very close to my heart and it has affected me very personally. Growing up early on, I felt like I was living a fairly normal life. What I would describe as what I would describe as one of the darkest days of my life. That was the night that my parents decided they were going to end their marriage, divorce, and unfortunately my mother decided she was going to convert to becoming a lesbian. And now this wasn't exactly an ordinary divorce, as you guys can see. I unfortunately had to endure a lot of drama and a lot of psychological damage growing up. She decided to make a generalization towards my grandfather and fellow men because my grandfather did some inappropriate acts towards her. I want to assure you that there are still good, godly men out there, including myself and many members of the men in this room, that still want to treat women with respect and treat them properly. And because of her decision, I've been on the wrong end of being exposed to a lot of very graphic and very inappropriate content at a very vulnerable stage in my life, things like inappropriate relations between two females at the age of 11 years old, seeing a woman cuddling, having PDA in a public setting. Not to mention all of the mental, psychological agendas that they tried to pass on to me and my unfortunate younger brother who grew up only knowing a lesbian mom and his father being in a second marriage. I had to also take time away from my school education at times as well to address the psychological and the emotional drama that I was going through at a very vulnerable time in my life, to meet with a school counselor, time that I can't get back and could have been dedicated to my education. I am also blessed now to be where I am at in my life, and God has brought me a long way after going through all of this mental and psychological drama that I had to endure. And I just want you guys to understand, I want to assure all of you that the next generation of kids in this Oceanside district doesn't deserve to go through all of the psychological damage and heartbreak that I endured. About 7 years ago, I unfortunately was disowned as the child of my biological mother, and it's because I decided to take a stand against an agenda that she tried to pass on to me. And you guys have an opportunity to take a stand against an agenda that our society is already trying to force upon to our next generation. I want you guys to know that like the previous speaker said, we can be loving and kind towards our children without indoctrinating them. So I assure you, you guys, your decision has way more weight than you guys may realize, and it can really have an effect on a lot of people, including your own children. So I encourage you strongly, take that into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Your board has approved the GSA Club to provide a safe and exclusive space for students in the LGBTQ community. Are there any clubs that provide safe spaces for others? Our pledge of the United States of America states one nation under God. I know I honor that, but it's so empty when it comes from the mouths that I see around me. Do you know what happened on March 27th, 2023? Do you know who was targeted? Those who honor one nation under God. Those who take the Pledge of Allegiance seriously. Christians, Americans. By someone from the homosexual community, the community this club has been approved for. What do they need a safe space for? Is the school itself not safe? Let's get the facts straight here. How do we get a club approved for Christians who also deserve a safe space? Has this horrific massacre been talked about at all? Has this been explained? Do any of you have the basic knowledge to do this? I see all this bickering for things coming to these school board meetings from one side that is criminalizing and pressing upon our youth in a rapid pretense that is only going to lead downhill. It's instigating years' worth of trauma and confusion to better prepare them for upcoming grooming. There are so many clubs that can be created, yet a club that seemingly fits the current status of curriculum, books, and extremist groomers' agendas is approved like a puzzle piece. It's foul, it's harmful. Why is there no support for Christians inside your schools nor your district? How do we get accountability for this? How do we let children choose when only one specific thing and targeted agenda is being used? We don't have an agenda, but it's so obvious here. You're sexualizing our children as young as preschool level for your demonic lusts and desires, and no one sees it but those who have had this curtain removed by Jesus himself. Every time we come in here, OUSD, it's a spiritual battle. How do we start healthier clubs in our children's schools? Who do we talk to? We need more support for the Christian children in your schools, OUSD. Tell me, how do you deny that there's a creator? When you get hurt, what do you say? And when someone tells you something shocking, the majority of the time you say, oh my God. Though we live in a fallen world, there's a consciousness that knows and acknowledges God. We also need a club that teaches our children the Constitution. The pledge isn't taken seriously, and there are examples from the adults who don't even know that Constitution. Under God. Yes, there is a separation, and that's why things are so vile right now in the world, zoomed in right down to Oceanside, California's very own school district, thanks to our school board. We need a club that teaches America's founding truths and biblical citizenship. There should be no separation. God should be in these schools, and there should be more support for the children and youth in your schools that believe the same thing. I know there are many of you who do not honor this. You would rather have your misconstrued flag of darkness and evil hanging in the remains of the American flag. But if you take that flag down, you dishonor everything this country was built upon and everything that was fought for. And how are your students going to know if you don't even teach them the truth? We need clubs that support this, not LGBTQ homosexual safe spaces. Our children know nothing because they have been failed and separated from God. We need a total reconstruction on the clubs and curriculum you're teaching from A to Z to things that matter and will bring a true educational foundation for our students.
Thank you.
Our last speaker on general consent items, Todd Madison, items Y, Z, and AA.
All right, thank you, Ann. Wow. So I'm just going to talk about carpenters on number Y. So on the agreement with the carpenters, it seems like a great thing. Good work by whoever is responsible for this in the organization. Thank you very much. This kind of thing is critical. I appreciate the focus on college-bound kids. I've been pretty involved in those efforts at El Camino in the past. Reality is most of our kids are not college-bound. Most of them are going to go out in the workforce to make a living, likely to be doing that the day after graduation. I've seen the expansion of our CTE efforts in the last decade, certainly applaud that. I remember sitting down with Doug Creedman in the office at EC several times talking about what we could do to connect industry partners. This is exactly what we need to do. So thanks to OUSD for pursuing that. Thanks to Mike and the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters. It's a good, solid paying career. They're essential. Good ones are hard to find. We need to do more than as much as we can to encourage that kind of thing. So moving on to Z and AA, the personnel reports. We'll talk more about this during the Personnel Commission report item. But the quick summary from your reports, as I've been doing for a while here, your annualized voluntary turnover continues to drop, having decreased to 5.11%, continuing to close in on 1/4 of the private industry average. That's awesome. HR is still doing a great job of hiring, 89 new teachers, 122 new support staff year to date. Retirements are low, 17 teachers, 16 classified. Overall hiring is still far exceeding departures, continuing to pace at 2 or 3 times the rate of people leaving. So that's awesome news. As I've pointed out many times, we appear to have no problem attracting and retaining employees. I hope in the upcoming negotiation reopeners we do not hear the usual self-serving lies about that to justify taking more money from the education of our kids and giving it to adults. You'll be seeing me a number of times tonight, as always, filling in the space between what could be done using graphic presentations, which we're not allowed to do anymore, versus what it takes to make the same points in words. Unfortunate, only union members are allowed to present to the board, But of course, it's a reflection of the contempt our board has for the input provided by parents and community members. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you. May I have the speakers, please?
Our first speaker, Rose Higuera.
All right, so 5A, it's the merit system. The fundamental purpose of the merit employment for classified employees under California Education Code is to ensure selection, promotion, and retention are without favoritism or prejudice and on the basis of merit and fairness. And it goes on to say merit principles. Rejection of unfit applicants. The merit system hires and promotes employees on the basis of knowledge, skill, and ability with open competition, retains employees on the basis of performance, and separates from the service those whose performance does not meet employment expectations, removes the selection process from the political arena and personal favoritism, provides for fair and impartial rules and consistency of administration of the rules, assures fair treatment of applicants and employees in all aspects of personnel administration without regard to political affiliation, gender, age, race, color, national origin, or ancestry, religious creed, and with the proper regard for their privacy and constitutional rights as citizens. So I would like to address you, Julie Vitale. The merit system here, I underline rejection of unfit applicants. I suggest that you are unfit to be the superintendent in the Oceanside Unified School
Rose.
District based on the grades
Rose,
alone. We are failing miserably.
Sorry,
84%.
Rose, I have a real quick thing. Real quick. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're talking about
The merit
Okay.
system
the
of
annual report, the
employees.
Personnel Commission to the board. So we're talking about the presentation that they are giving and what it's for and what they do. So
Well, it applies to our superintendent because she is failing miserably on many, many areas. The grades, all of her pushing of her agenda, of her LGBT, all of this stuff is not educating. We need to teach the basics. And we need to fire Jordy Sparks. He promotes CRT and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Rose.
We don't need
Rose.
any of that either. Thank you.
Speaker Todd Madison.
All right, so on to the report. So thanks to the Personnel Commission for their service in this. I know I've been involved in some of these committees. It takes dedication and a willingness to help, and I really appreciate their service in this. Looking at the data, I see some interesting things. In every regular board meeting, we see personnel orders. If we look at the report's personnel actions, virtually all the statistics in those categories don't match the numbers reported in the personnel orders, so I'm not quite sure why. For example, under resignations, we see 88 listed in this report, but if one totals up the orders for fiscal 22, there's 79 resignations in classified and 55 in certificated for a total of 134. Ditto for other categories. I'm not quite sure why they don't match. It seems like they should actually match up with each other. I'm not sure which report is accurate. So I pointed this out actually in November of 21 when I talked about this as well, but we see it again here. So there must be some reason for it. I'm not sure why. Using the data in the report to look at the hiring process, we see the district posted 115 jobs last year, had a whopping 2,004 applications, which is about 17 applications per job. Getting 17 applications per opening is not what most would consider a problem, at least not in any normal business. And we don't see that from the hiring numbers either. It looks like it's going great. Farther down, we see the applicants were tested, 525 of them passed. I assume this represents the final pool of qualified applicants. That means about 5 qualified people per job opening. applied, so that matches the same data as the fiscal 21 report, so it seems on track. Having hired hundreds in my career, I can tell you getting 5 qualified people to apply for every open position is hardly a sign of difficulty in hiring. My HR department would have loved to have had 5 people to send me for interviews. I'm not sure where this employee shortage is that we've heard so much about, but it doesn't seem to be happening here, nor is it happening in most places nationally. It seems to be more of a media-generated frenzy than actually represented in data. So the report is noticeably missing some very key numbers that any management interested in good financial decisions would have. Exit interview data. You need to ask people why they're leaving if you're actually concerned about retaining employees. And as I've gone back and forth before, apparently Oceanside doesn't do that. I can't imagine any $200 million business that would not do exit interviews if they were concerned with actually knowing why people might be leaving. So again, we have a supposed problem with hiring and retention. We'll probably hear a little bit more about that in the future in this meeting. But we know it's just financial mismanagement to not actually look at why that is happening. Bottom line is, if we're going to take candy from babies to give to yourselves to fix a problem, we might want to work on the cover story for that problem a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Staff have a response to the inconsistency that Todd pointed out on the chart?
Mr. President, we can look into that. I think that Mr. Madison has been given that information before, but I'll review the numbers with our Director of Certificate of Classified Employees, and we'll get back to Mr. Madison on any updates so he has information that he needs.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one.
Mr. Madison. Item 5B.
Imagine that. All right, so first I need to say, as I've said many times in the past, our teachers at OUSD are great. Awesome teachers. They do an awesome job. As with most of humanity, most are wonderful people, have nothing but the best interests of our kids in mind. I'm very happy that we're able to pay them well and provide them with good benefits. Absolutely. The problem, however, is that there are realities in this, realities of funding. That means everything we do has to be a compromise. Just like in real life, you may really want those box seats to the Padres, but you can't just write a check and make the money for that appear. The money you use for that has to come from somewhere. What if finding that box seat money meant taking it from your kid's college education? That's exactly what we're doing here. You all know the numbers. Median total compensation of an Oceanside Unified teacher in 2021 was $127,142. With the 5% raise given last year, that number is likely somewhere around $133,500 right now. You can all grumble about that, but no one has ever refuted that using actual data. We also know that the raise we're talking about here is a bonus raise on top of the normal increases built into the salary schedule. No one is proposing we change that. Those periodic increases should continue. The argument I make is taking money away from our kids to add more to it. We know since whenever OTA gets, whatever the OTA gets will be applied to CSEA and administrative employees, a 5% bonus raise would cost the district somewhere around $9 million a year. So what if we decided to do something different this time around? What if we took the money and put it into the things that teachers actually say they want? Not the union, but the teachers themselves. Things like higher pay for starting teachers. I would agree that should be done. OTA could, if they wanted to, negotiate a new salary schedule that focuses more heavily on the first steps of the schedule. For a fraction of the $9 million this will cost, they could increase starting teacher pay by thousands of dollars a year. Why don't we do that? What about decreased class sizes? Another perennial wish list item. And I agree with them. If we put $9 million into nothing but class size reduction, we could easily cut class sizes by several kids per class. Keeping that for a few cycles in the next few years would be approaching 20 per class. That would be awesome. Why don't we do that? What about classroom discretionary funds? For a very small fraction of that money, we could get every teacher several $100s a year to spend on classroom supplies. So they don't have to take it out of their pocket. Isn't that a good idea? Moving from benefits to teachers, how about reinstituting busing for kids? What a great benefit that would be. There's no way to figure out what the impact would be if we used the money for improving programs for low-income kids, English learners, kids with special needs, gifted and talented, etc. But But we're not going to do that. We're going to say we want to do those things, but not actually do it. What we're going to do is push as hard as possible for more money for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Any questions for staff?
Madison.
All right. So here we have the reopening of negotiations with the support staff. If there's any group in Oceanside Unified that likely deserves some bonus raise money, it's classified staff, absolutely. But I have to say, we don't actually know that for a fact. I don't know that. Ms. Vitale doesn't know that. Mr. McAteer doesn't know that. And why? Because the district refuses to do something that would be totally common in private industry, which is find out what jobs pay in comparable private industry positions in the immediate neighborhood. Yes, we'll likely see surveys of salaries in other school districts. If you're a landscaper, both you and your wife are working hard and trying to take care of a few little kids. Does it really matter what landscapers in Chula Vista make? Are you really going to quit OUSD and get into an hour-long commute to go to Chula Vista? That's not going to happen. What does matter a lot more is what local companies pay. What gets paid down the street where you work. It would be an easy range where you could perhaps attend your kids' school plays after work or be home for dinner once in a while. Our support staff should be demanding that our district obtain a salary survey of like jobs in North County communities, the communities where our people would likely find jobs if they were not working at OUSD. Don't you want to know what local private employees make for doing the same job that our staff does in the school district? Is that not important? I mean, that seems to be the competition for our employees. I truly hope the CSE leadership does something about that. And if the district won't get that survey, find one and buy it. Do something for the benefit of the members with that money. I'd love to see that survey myself. I hope we'll get a chance someday. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. We'll move to a speaker.
Todd Madison.
All right, so this is the OUSD side of this discussion. We've been over this many times before. I'm sure you guys could probably give this speech that I'm about to give as much as I do. So the teachers union wants a bonus raise, but you can't just write a check and make the money appear. Money used has to come from somewhere. And whatever you do now is going to be the gift that keeps on giving. It's going to impact our budget for forever in the future. So to recap the numbers I just discussed, median total compensation, Oceanside teacher, 127, 142, 5% raise last year, now 133, 500. As Ms. Norman knows, these are facts directly from OUSD's own records. If the district were actually going to negotiate this, instead of just putting up a charade designed to fool people into thinking that, they would have Ms. Norman verify that number and publicize it so that parents and community understand that what the people who might end up holding our kids hostage for more money for themselves are making right now. That would be a negotiation. They might even project what would need to be cut from kids to support that bonus raise and let parents know. So those who don't understand the financials, meaning most normal people, would at least understand that if their board member votes for approval, they're actually voting to cut something specific from their kids' education to do that. And how about a projection for what the money could be used for otherwise? If we can actually spend it without going bankrupt, which is a question, what could we spend it on that would benefit the education of kids? Adding money to adult paychecks does nothing for the education of kids. It has never been proven to improve the education of kids. So let's look at what we could spend it on that would actually improve the education of kids, which I think is our job here. I think that's what we're here for. So what a concept. We know the district is projecting financial problems down the road. Lately, there's been a lot of news. California's future budget projections seem to have been far rosier than justified by economic conditions. We know the massive funding we've gotten the last few years will not continue. So now the question is, will we get any significant increases at all? Now is most certainly not the time to bring more cost into the budget with another series of bonus raises. Not unless you enjoy the idea of laying people off in the future to afford those raises, which is undoubtedly what will happen. But I know the pull is strong. The administration will benefit from the ultimate in corrupt practices, the Me Too raise. So if some real negotiating happened, they would be shooting themselves in the foot. Who cares if that benefits kids, right? What if our board actually decided to put the best interests of kids first for a change rather than just saying that? What if our board made it known now is the time to put any extra money into fixing the academic failures of the district, not topping off bank accounts of adults? What if our board did its job and forced the district to think about the education of kids first? I think we can do that, can we? Thanks.
Thank you, Todd. Any questions?
Madison.
Okay, the other side of this one. This is the OUSD side of the CSEA negotiation. So, again, you guys have heard this many times also. But as I said in item C, isn't what is important here what your employees would make elsewhere in the area? Isn't that what we need to look at? Are we really doing the support staff a service by not doing that? So I looked into this in the last round. For a few $1,000s, you can buy a fairly comprehensive survey that would give you an objective view of how your pay rates compared to comparable rates in the area. This is, of course, what any $200 million private company would do. We don't, though. You're considering a bonus raise that will cost millions. Isn't it worth a few $1,000s to know how your numbers work in the market, not how they work in far-flung school districts that have nothing to do with anyone's going to work at here? During the recent negotiations in LA, they did the same thing. We saw lots of lies being passed back and forth. Primary one is that their employees only average $25,000 a year. Anyone can download the payroll data from LAUSD and see that. I've had multiple exchanges with media on that one. It's a truly ridiculous lie. But we never saw any actual data on what similar jobs pay in the same area. In private business, that would be the first priority. What comparable companies far away pay has no impact, or has impact, but it's only critical to executives who can afford to get up and leave and move their houses and so on and so forth. Most normal people have a much harder time to do that, particularly when they're living close to grandma so they can have someone to watch the kids when they get home from school. Both spouses are working. Non-OUSD spouse has a job in the area. They can't just get up and leave to go somewhere else because they pay 50 cents or $1 an hour more. What if OUSD did something shocking and amazing in this round and actually looked at comparable market rates in the area to determine what fair pay is for their employees? Crazy idea, I know. Good luck with that, but I've got to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, so another year, another set of calendars to be approved, developed with little input from parents. Another issue we've gone over many times. I think I actually copied and pasted part of this from last year's talk. Whether the calendars proposed are the best for families, I can't say. It's not up to me to say. I'm just one person. What I can say, however, and what is very clear, is the fact that the district does not respect parents enough to give them any actual voice in the process of establishing the school calendar. So, yes, I was at the DPAC meeting where the calendar was discussed, in the Zoom meeting. At that meeting, the group was told they could not look at the draft calendar because it was, quote, not approved by the board yet. Now, I happen to know how that works, and it doesn't require the board to approve a draft calendar to show it to parents. It's not a requirement. The board has to approve the final calendar, of course, but not the draft. So DPAC parents were not even allowed to look at the calendar being discussed at that point. If you read the parties involved in the calendar committee, which is the body that has real input, you'd see that it includes representatives of CSEA, ODA, and the leadership team. The word parent doesn't appear. As usual, of course, the union appears, but parents do not. Several years ago, I stood at this podium in front of Dr. Coleman at the time, pointed out the fact that the most important thing you can do affecting parents' daily schedule had absolutely zero input from parents involved. He actually pulled the calendar from the agenda at that point and then ran it through the DPAC before putting it back on the agenda for the board. That was a minor incident of actual paying attention to parents. It was awesome. We had a board then that actually thought about those things too. So putting together a few drafts with input from parents on a committee, putting those out for a vote, restricted only to parents with kids in the district, would be trivially easy. Trivially easy. You could do that through the various systems, ARIES and so on, send out an email, let everybody vote on what they like in the calendar, take the input, go back and use that to design what you want to do. It will cost nothing, zero. But we don't actually do that because we know the district prioritizes employees, not parents. It's obvious in the members of the calendar committee. There's nothing in the district that has any greater impact on the families, on the daily lives of families. Providing parents with no real input in that is representative of the importance OUSD places on parent input, pretty close to zero. I say somewhere between zero and a nuisance. My mother told me, don't pay attention to what people say, pay attention to what they do. We see what our board and our district does, and it doesn't involve a whole lot of attention paid to what parents want for their kids. The calendar is an obvious example of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Graham Frazier. Graham Frazier.
I'm sure glad that Todd went before me because he was far more eloquent than I could be. And all I can say is I agree with everything that he said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. I want to take a moment, Todd, just real quick. Would you please share the process? Because I know it was one of my questions personally that we were talking about. So will you
For
share?
calendar committee?
Yes.
Sure. As Mr. Madison shared, DPAC was part of this in terms of providing important input in terms of values and what's important. We did a streamlined process which was effective in terms of identifying those values that was incorporated in the calendar committee's recommendation. We also met with both groups of student leaders from the high schools, and in those meetings, the same thing, input was provided by the students. And what we found is that what by far the largest importance to the students was making sure that finals ended at the semester before winter break. And so some of those items that were of value, both from DPAC and from the students, were incorporated into the calendars that you have before you.
Awesome. Thank you.
We have public comment?
Yes. Todd Madison.
So this one's quick. I'm really just here because I used to be able to see support staff at El Camino and King and all the other schools and say thank you occasionally. My youngest graduated last year, though, so I don't get that opportunity. So I'm really glad to see we're celebrating all the hard work the classified staff comes into. I know I'm supposed to speak to you guys, but I need to say thank you to any support staff that's out there because you guys do an awesome job. So thank you very much. As the resolution says, they certainly provide valuable services. It doesn't say, the resolution does not say, and they're also great people, but they are. So it should say that in there somewhere. So I volunteered many ways. I've had to add my own thanks to their work, and I'm sure every parent of kids in Oceanside Unified would agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a first and I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Item K, adoption of resolution number 32, 2223, proclamation for the Day of the Teacher, Wednesday, May 10th, 2023.
Yes, in continuing and valuing all of our employees, we'd like to make the recommendation to designate May 10th, 2023 as Day of the Teacher for our ODA membership employees.
Thank you. Public comment, please.
Madison.
Getting my steps in. So more good things here. I mean, teachers are awesome, as I said earlier. As with the classified staff, 100% agreement with me on this. Probably every parent in the district. 30,000 attaboys, I think, are behind this one. Certainly, there's been some friction between parents and some teachers, but largely, I feel, created by union-driven initiatives that clearly oppose things that parents want for their kids. The Teachers Union is the largest political organization in the state, far larger than any of the mean, nasty corporations we hear so much about. But being part of the largest political machinery in the state doesn't prevent parents from seeing and understanding the great things that teachers do. Teachers who would like to separate from the union are encouraged to do that. Perhaps if enough teachers did that, it would be clearer to parents that the wrong things the union has supported are separate from teachers themselves. Opting out is easy, legal, and would save over $1,000 a year for most teachers. The union is required to allow it and stop collecting monthly dues when you do opt out. There are several websites devoted to this, mypaymysay.com, teacherfreedom.org, optouttoday.com are a few of those. For those who want to continue with the specialized forms of insurance, there are multiple options to do that as well that charge a small fraction of what union dues would cost. I hope teachers continue to keep up the great work they've been doing here and send a message to the union that they're on the side of parents and kids, not on the side of big union control. Thank you.
Thank you. Item K. Oh, we do have a speaker. Okay.
Susan Custer.
Good evening. I'd like to address the purchase of these new school programs. Several of the programs being purchased for a total of $1.5 million from the school district. For what I can tell, most, if not all, of these programs are computer-based. The question I have is, why are we putting our kids on the computer so much? I'm going to read a quote from Tech Billionaires. It's written by Alice Thomason in the Times, and it was fact-checked by Snopes and determined to be true. The most sought-after private school in Silicon Valley, the Waldorf School of the Peninsula, bans electronic devices for under 11 and teaches the children of eBay, Apple, Uber, and Google staff to make go-karts, knit, and cook. Mark Zuckerberg wants his daughters to read Dr. Seuss and play outside rather than use Messenger Kids. Steve Jobs strictly limited his children's use of technology at home. It is astonishing if you think about it. The more money you make out of the tech industry, the more you appear to shield your family from its effects. If the people that develop the technology do not think it's good for their kids, maybe it's time to reimagine methods used to teach in our local public schools. I'd like to address the ALEX computer program in particular. The program will be used for math in grades 6 through 12, and the cost for this is $281,000. I researched this program online specifically to read the reviews. From the website, sitejabber.com, I have the following quotes. ALEX has a rating of 1.3 stars from 1,732 reviews, indicating that most customers are generally dissatisfied with their purchase. Reviewers complaining about ALEX most frequently mention knowledge checks, math class, and high school problems. ALEX ranks 520th among tutor sites. Of the 1,732 reviews, only 64 were a 5-star, and 1,577 were a 1-star. Some of the comments are as follows. The program is absolutely awful. Only sets you back. The time wasted on 15 to 20 topics a day could have been used for studying for the test. It's terribly operated. Explanations assume prior knowledge, which makes them utterly useless. School-wide math progress has plummeted since using ALEX. I would like to suggest that you hold off on the purchase of this program and do further research for a better math curriculum, perhaps one that is not computer-based. Maybe consider the viewpoint of the tech billionaires.
Any questions for staff?
So in 6C, I see that we're spending $2 million on new curriculum from McGraw-Hill Study for English Language Arts. And we see here in the scores taken from the California Department of Education that our reading is 84.61%. We are getting an F. We are failing students. This school board is failing students. So I don't know how throwing $2 million is going to get our kids to be able to read basic reading skills. So, but I know that we do have a Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion that we're spending a lot of money on that is not teaching our kids the basics. So I would like to know what this curriculum is and how I go about learning what is this curriculum. Is it racist? Does it have social emotional learning, diversity, equity, and inclusion? I know, Raquel, you mentioned equity. So I want to know all of this new math curriculum that you're bringing in. We'd love to see it as a community, as parents. So how do we go about reviewing all the new curriculum? Do we have an answer? I mean, what do I need to do?
Kids go to school?
My kids have all graduated from Oceanside schools.
So we're currently using this adoption. So the reason I ask you is because if you had kids in our school, they would have the textbooks at home. This is just a different version of those textbooks. It's all been adopted and approved already. If you want to see a copy, you can make an appointment with ESS.
Okay,
and they'll
great.
have a copy there for you.
Perfect, thank you.
And she was the only one? And was she the only speaker?
Okay. May I make a comment or discussion? You know, as a classroom teacher.
Get closer to your mic.
So I reviewed this transitional kindergarten curriculum, this frog curriculum, $174,000. I'm just wondering why it's so much. When I looked it up on Amazon, it was $4,600. And I would like to know what the social emotional learning aspect of it is, using conscious discipline. What is that all about?
Okay, so we will vote on item 5D. Was that it? Did you have any more to say?
Can you answer what the social emotional learning aspect and conscious discipline, what is that?
No, but I'm sure that we can get somebody to meet with you and they can explain it to you, if that's
Okay.
possible.
All right.
Through the chair. I love hecklers. Through the chair, we're not really allowed to respond to your question. However, we can direct you.
You have 2 minutes. You're free to respond. You serve the community. The community voted you in to be a safeguard for the children and the families. So we would appreciate your transparency. Thank you so much, Eleanor. If you don't know the answer, you could just say, I don't know. I didn't review the curriculum, but we are going to vote 5-0 on it. I mean, Mike Blessing says it'll always be 5-0. Is that true? I mean, why do you guys vote if it's always 5-0, Mike? Isn't that why we have a board, so that you can vote and represent the members of the community, the children, the families, the people that voted for you?
Okay, we're
So we'd love an answer. If you don't have an answer, that's fine. You can say, I don't know. But you're free to respond at any time. You have your freedoms.
Thank you.
So
So this is kind of similar to Patrick's talk about the vans. It's an interesting one. So I agree with the intent. The El Camino commuter program deserves all the support it can get, maybe even more than this. They should have some smoking fast machines. If they're going to learn computers, they can't be looking at the hourglass, or I guess it's the rotating circle these days, for a whole lot of time. But if you look at the Dell quote, you can see the specs for the machines on page 2. Now, I used to work at Toshiba America in the department that actually put these quotes together for large corporations. We once put together 20,000 laptops that we had to remove the cameras on them before we shipped them because they didn't want cameras in them. So I'm pretty good at reading these quotes. These seem to be pretty much off-the-shelf machines. Nothing I can see in it is anything unique. I mean, it's even Windows 11 Home, not Pro. Not even an Office license. It specifically says there's no Office licenses in there. Not seeing any kind of form of specialized support in there in that quote either. Total cost per machine is $2,319.99 per machine, with free shipping, of course. Now, if you should go onto Amazon, you can find this identical machine with, as far as I can tell, the exact same complement of hardware and software, except that it includes Windows 11 Pro, not Home, for $1,049.99. Free shipping there, too, because I'm Prime. So normally, when one buys a product in bulk, you get a discount. If you buy 35 count of something, you should get it for less than retail normally. So I don't know what's up with this. I don't know why we're paying $1,300 more per unit than we could simply buy them from Amazon. I'd be happy to put it on my account if you'd like. I can get reimbursed. But I'm sure if we went somewhere and offered to buy 35 of them, we could get the price down even farther. I just don't know if we're just spending money because we can, or if there's some reason here. If we bought them from Amazon, we'd likely have about $40,000 left over. I was on the EC Site Council for 4 years. We were never given a single chunk of money of $40,000 to spend on anything. That never happened. That was much larger than we ever got on anything. I remember spending $10,000 on library books once. It was the biggest thing we had. We could give every EC teacher a few $100s to spend in their classroom on discretionary supplies, so they wouldn't have to beg parents for paper towels and Post-its and things like that with that money. So I'm not quite getting it. I'm not quite understanding why we're paying over twice as much for these computers as you can buy them at retail and not giving that money to teachers to use for their kids. Thank you.
Any questions for staff?
Todd Madison.
Another interesting one. So $5 million. Wow, that's awesome. What a bonanza. The listing of it is arts, music, and instructional materials, but if you look at the listing that's on the board agenda, it's pretty much everything. It lists science, math, financial literacy, all kinds of stuff that you can spend this on. Hopefully we'll spend it on things that really improve the education of our kids. I like the arts focus. That's great. Prop 28, hopefully we'll fund some of that. But when it comes to other things, I remember having a conversation with Robert Ho at King several years ago. Robert's one of my favorite all-time science teachers. I studied physics at UCLA, so I'm kind of a science guy. So I've had some great science teachers for my kids, and he's one of them. But he told me this story about a huge battle that happened over funding for science supplies, not just for his class, but district-wide. I think I remember excuse me. I think I remember it as over something like $4 per student. It was some ridiculously small amount of money that he was fighting over. I thought it was crazy at the time. You know, I probably talked about it here the next time the district decided to give itself millions instead of funding science supplies. Hopefully it hasn't been an issue since then, and I don't know if any of this money could be used for that. But I love the fact that financial literacy is also spelled out, and I don't know what the wiggle room or gray area is here. It's a specific item listed on the potential for funding there. So financial literacy is something where I think our school systems fall down tremendously. There is really nothing out there where people get taken advantage more of these days than in financials. They're fairly complicated. People get taken for a ride all the time on them. It's incredibly complex, kind of like school budgeting. Anyone who's ever stood in front of the ticket window at SeaWorld and tried to figure out whether they're better off buying individual tickets, a family ticket, an annual pass. Do they want something that includes parking? How about discounts at the concessions? You know that financials are a very common way that large companies can take advantage of people. So I think we should be doing what we can to teach our kids at least some of the basics of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd.
Graham Frazier.
Again, Todd's a very hard act to follow, but I would like to, again, bring you back to what I call the main thing. As an institution, the main thing is what for your institution? What is the main thing? I'll tell you. It's educating the kids. So I'm just wondering whether all this has been put through the filter of what the main thing is. And I just asked you to do that with everything that comes before you as far as expenditures. When I read the item, I was struck by the words instructional material. And that raised a real red flag for me. Because as you know, we've been concerned about certain instructional material that is in your libraries. And in that, finally, we've listened to Superintendent Vitale about how to go about making the proper request for reconsideration of instructional materials. It took us a while to listen, so I apologize for that. But I think we are about to enter into that correct procedure. And that instructional materials recommendation, which I have one here, which will be handed out a little bit later, talks about we are challenging the content of use of instructional material. One of these instructional materials books in the library, and there are many sort of like it, but the one that sort of I've read myself from cover to cover, it's really like a comic book. And it's not really in good English either, by the way. But it's called Gender Queer. And the instructional material in Gender Queer for your children, our children now, includes graphics like this. Is this the type
Mr. Frazier, I'm so sorry.
Instructional material that you have approved? Obviously, yes, because you've approved this book.
We're talking currently about the block grant
That's
itself.
what I'm talking about, yes. I'm concerned that this block grant will include this type of pornography, as I believe it has in the past. That's the tie-in. And I want you to make sure that you look at every book that's going to be coming in this block grant if the block grant includes books as it has in the past. And this is how some of these books have snuck in here. And you guys refused to do anything about it until we went through this procedure. So whether this will do any good or not, I don't know. I think probably not.
Thank you.
Because Vitale wants these books in your libraries.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Sandra Martinez.
So this is regarding the closure of Reynolds. So I would like the record to show that this is the 5th school that Vitale and this school board have successfully managed to close. So I got my hands on a registered professional engineer and former OUSD engineer of record. He reviewed the record of the soilification at Reynolds Elementary. This review is limited to the liquefaction findings and recommendations of the subject report. In reading the entire report, I found to be highly professional and only relevant to the construction of new school from 1 to 2 stories after the existing buildings were demolished. This study for the new structures concludes that if ground improvements are performed as recommended in the report, that structures can be supported on shallow spread footings with foundations bearing entirely on improved ground or compacted. Alternatively, deep foundations may be used to support the structures. In other words, it's not a 911 situation to build a new school at this site, but as we know, that is not the district's intent. The district appears to be intentionally conflating the liquefaction findings of the MTGL report to support the demolition of the existing structures and the sale of the property as the only reasonable option for this site. Are you listening, Dr. Vitale, or are you guys doodling? I would appreciate it if you would look at people when they address you, Dr. Vitale. Thank you.
I would appreciate it if you'd stay on topic. This is about the CEQA.
This is about
not
the
about
closing of
closing the school.
This is about the closing of Reynolds. There may be other good rational reasons to abandon Reynolds, but without a professional risk analysis, it's a spurious argument to make the risk from liquefaction. So in other words, the
Mrs. Igara, I'm real quick. Let's get back on topic real quick. We're trying to get to the CEQA part of this, of your conversation, because but this is about the CEQA part of the Reynolds closure. So if it has something to do with this, then yes, you can speak on it. If it does not have anything to do with the CEQA part of this, then we will have to terminate this conversation at this time. Okay.
For not a legitimate reason. That's a travesty, a complete travesty.
We've had those conversations. We've all had discussions. We've had meetings.
Probably because you want a $19 million new district office, and that's a shame.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for your comments.
Right. It's a shame. This is the fifth school that you guys have closed. This is really sad for our kids in our community. I don't understand. We need a new board, and we need a new superintendent. You obviously don't have the school, children, or the family's interests at heart. I don't know why you're in the business of working with kids. You need to resign, Vitale.
So just for clarification, we're going to go, can we go through clarification? Because as long as we've been here, how many schools have we actually closed?
2.
Since this board's been in place?
Yes, ma'am.
I believe just 3. Ocean Shores, Pacific.
Now, Ocean Shores, because Ocean Shores, I have the floor at the moment. We're having a discussion. You asked the question. We're going to answer it. So we're at the point of where we had to close Ocean Shores because of the issue, so we actually moved it to Ditmar.
Ocean Shores, and then we had the Garrison sinkholes.
Garrison had the sinkholes.
And then we had liquefaction with Reynolds. Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify some there. Thank you. Sandra Martinez? Sandra?
Dwayne Coleman.
Okay, I'm just going to read what you've written here on the background. On March 13th, 2023, the Oceanside Unified School District Board of Education voted to close its Reynolds Elementary School campus after a geotechnical soils report revealed that the site could not undergo a planned modernization without significant mitigation measures due to soil liquefaction. That is not what the report said. I'm simply stating what you said does not reflect what the report said at all in any way, shape, or form. You did not do your due diligence as following their recommendations and investigating further. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so new buses, awesome. Not quite sure what we're going to do with them. That's kind of the question here. Is, in the last meeting we closed Reynolds, and of course the district was very clear about the fact that they weren't providing any transportation for those kids. I'm not sure use your thumb was part of what the district said to those parents. Probably not, but that was the takeaway. Apparently we saving millions by closing the school did not justify providing little tiny kids with the kind of busing we see in most districts across America. They can just walk several miles a day, round trip. Builds character, I'm sure. And now we're going to spend $750,000 on buses, but we can't provide buses for the kids for Reynolds. Okay. So are we going to carry sports teams to events, bring kids to prom? We're going to use those buses to do what parents, why don't we use those buses to do what parents would like us to do with buses, which is take kids to school. That's really what I think people think of when they see buses. So not surprising, I suppose. Our schools are supposed to focus on educating kids academically, but seem to focus on everything else. I'm sure our busing program focuses on everything except getting kids to school, little kids to school. It's kind of par for the course. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
first three speakers will be Janae Harris, Adam Riojas, and Sarah St. John.
Hello, I am a new parent to the Oceanside School District. I just moved here in February, and I really just was trying to advocate for my children because I have been reaching out to the school district and I haven't gotten a response from anyone really. They've just been telling me, oh, this person will call you and this person will call you, and no one has called me back. So I applied for the intra-district, which was previously, I think, called school choice application for my children to go to certain schools that I researched before moving here. And then I quickly found out that they had to go to schools that were assigned from their, I guess, zip code. I am a property manager. And so where I live is not my choice. I'm an on-site property manager, and I stay at the apartment, so I can't really change my zip code based on that. And also, I looked up schools prior to moving here because I wanted the best schools for my children. I am a former educator. I got out of education because I really don't believe in a school system within the government. It's no good. But I know I'm going to educate my children, so I'm going to try to put them in the best schools that I deem appropriate based on where I live. However, reaching out, Donna Omari gave me a denial of my kids being able to go to Palm Quest and I don't know what I just wrote on this paper. Palm Quest Elementary and Jefferson Middle School were the choices that I picked. And Genesia is the person I spoke to on the phone when they denied my application. I called both schools, and they denied the application, saying that there wasn't room for any incoming students. So I asked specifically to, were there any room for incoming students with the grade levels that my kids are in right now, and both schools said they had room for incoming students. I am a single parent, and my kids both have different half days at the current schools they go to. I'm using my lunch breaks to pick them up from school. I'm using my 15-minute breaks to get them on their half days. It's just not convenient. These two schools are across the street from each other, Palm Quest and Jefferson. Really, my plea is just to get someone to communicate with me and call me back, and maybe I can see how I can get an overturn for this decision. The application that was denied also said no appeals allowed, which I think is pretty unreasonable. So, I mean, honestly, I'm just looking for someone to communicate with me about how I can appeal that decision.
Just real quick, is all your information on your sign-in card?
Yes.
So phone number and contact?
And the
we'll have
email.
Somebody contact you to make sure that that is taken care of, so we can make sure we get that to the right people and so that we can get that.
Okay. You don't have a phone number? I can give you my phone number.
Mrs. Gravlin, our executive director of elementary, is in the back, and she'll help you.
Thank you.
Jacket.
Thank you, Vicki. Can we set the timer up, please? Can I get the timer up for 2 minutes? Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adam Riojas. Happy birthday, Raquel. You know, I'm grieved by how our money's being spent, how our education's being taught. The people that we've backed, like Mr. Blessing, Raquel, and some of you others that we've actually voted for and spoke about, and some of the people that I've mentored, back to you, Mr. Blessing. But the direction of the school is horrible. It is. You know, we're allowing all kinds of crazy monies being spent without, I mean, right now, from the people that spoke, you could have saved half of the money that you're spending. But look, I'm really here to speak about what I believe in and who I am. I'm now a pastor. I'm a business owner in Oceanside. I own a coffee shop down on the beach. I'm the lead pastor at a church called At the Cross. I went to Laurel, I went to Jefferson, I went to Oceanside High School. But I'm here to speak because of the direction we're at. It's not good. And, you know, we're all going to be held accountable one day. We are. Everything's lined up in the Middle East. One world government is being set up. It's time. You see it happening. Here's something you may not know. The killer that just killed these people, this little girl that was confused that was a guy, that was a girl that thought she was a guy, she killed 3 adults. 60, 61, 60, 666. She killed 3 children, 999. You invert that, you get 666. I'm sure the girl didn't even go in there doing this. It's horrible. The guy that just shot up the people at the bank thought she was a female. We're living in some crazy times. Everything is lined up, and we all will be held accountable. It doesn't matter if you think you're a Christian, if you believe you're a Christian, if you don't even believe, you will be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sarah St. John. Sorry. I'm Sarah St. John, RDH. Sarah St. John.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Sarah St. John, RDHAP, school-based dental sealant program. I've been in contact with some of you through email. I wanted to explain some more about my program. A school-based dental sealant program is a public health intervention that provides students with access to care issues a mobile and convenient option. Providing these services in school during school hours. It is free to the school district, students, and their families. Paid for through Medi-Cal reimbursements and grant funding. Sorry. The schools or the families will be billed, the schools nor the families will be billed for these services. The only things required from the school district is a space to provide these services, such as a gymnasium. I've worked on in these type of rooms or rooms that are empty in the school buildings, and electricity to plug in my mobile unit, as well as distributing my consent forms to the families and returning them to myself. I have been in practice since 2019 as an RDHAP, which is a registered dental hygienist in alternative practice, where I can go out and meet the needs of people in the community that do not have access to care. I currently work in Warner Springs and am soon to be approved in Julian Unified as well. Our pilot program has been received well by parents in the school. I am here today to introduce myself and this program to offer these services to Oceanside Unified School District. I have brought some of my information so you guys can go through that at a later time. I have some statistics, but I've run out of time. So if you would like my information, I can give that to you and you can contact me at a later date.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Our next 3 speakers will be Louise Uradell, Rose, and Patrick Higuera.
The definition of a pervert is to lead someone away from what is considered right, natural, or acceptable. Just recently, the UN came out with a legal report that says minor child should have the right to consent to sex with an adult. Make no mistake, this sort of perversion just started at places just like Oceanside Unified. Places that to say a 10-year-old is old enough to make a decision to make a gender transition to be availed of gender-affirming care, to deny who they are as a person. It's all framework for a godless agenda with the ultimate goal to prevent the youth and future of this nation. You can see evidence of this agenda here in your own libraries with books you approved, like This Book is Gay, which pushes students to get on gay sex meeting apps. Here's one excerpt from that book. Another major plus to sex apps is they allow a degree of anonymity. so guys and girls can meet in public this way without having to self-identify by entering gay establishments. This sounds like something Chris Hansen would use on To Catch a Predator. But no, it's just Oceanside Unified trading their mantle of esteemed educators for that of activist pimps. This book goes on. Is there something icky about gay sex? This chapter is simply all the stuff teachers should be saying if they want to be inclusive. Icky? I can think of one thing that's icky. A grown adult teacher discussing with minor children how to give hand jobs, blow jobs, and anal sex. But I guess y'all don't have a problem with that. Will the real educators who care about kids please stand up? Oh, where could you be? As you will notice, all the members of the board remain seated. The way I see it, the perversion started at places like this, and they need to end at places like this.
Proverbs 28:2 says, "When there is moral rot within a nation, its government topples easily, but wise and knowledgeable leaders bring stability." A wicked ruler is as dangerous to the poor as a roaring lion or attacking bear. And Proverbs 29:2, "When the godly are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked are in power, they groan." Vitala, you're using minors. You use the El Camino newscasters to spread falsehoods. I noticed that you used a little clip of me on your little news channel to turn around what we're trying to do. We are not trying to take anything away from the LGBT community. We love those kids. We are trying to take inappropriate materials out of the hands of minors. And why you would want those in the schools is beyond me. You're using propaganda as a way to perpetuate lies that porn and sexualization, dehumanization is good for kids. You're using weaponization of kids, teachers, librarians, teachers' unions, the news, and Facebook, you too, Jordy, to stir up hate, bigotry, allies, using language to incite political activism against those who stand for truth, justice, innocence, education, the Constitution, marriage, and family values. You use all forms and tactics of bullying and intimidation and weaponization tactics, Vitelli, to silence parents like me and those who challenge your narrative. Because we disagree with your argument, does that mean we hate you? Your disagreement of my values, does that mean that you hate me? Your truth and your reality phobic. And that's a shame to have you
very
as
much,
leader
Rose.
of our kids.
Next person, please.
Again, 2 Peter 2 says this, "But there were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers," who are sitting in front of me, "among you. They will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the sovereign Lord who bought them, bringing swift destruction on themselves. If God condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah by burning them to ashes and made them as an example of what is going to be happening to the ungodly, then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and to hold the unrighteous for punishment on the day of judgment. This is especially true of those who follow the corrupt desires of their flesh and despise authority." It's like, what do you guys believe in? What do you really believe in? Do you believe in, maybe you put your trust in money? Maybe you put your trust in your education. What is your truth? Is it money? Is it your lifestyle? What is your truth? It says, Romans 14:11 says, "As I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess that Jesus is Lord." John 14:6 says this. So what's your truth? Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." we're only here but a vapor, and I've said this before. I didn't have the whole time to read 2 Peter. I wish I would have. Like I did last week, I had to rush out of here because I only got 2 minutes. But what is your truth? What is your truth? Because you're sure not showing it here. I mean, you're not Christians. That's fine. But the Word of God is the Word of God, and you can't change it, and you can ignore it all you want, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So you guys better figure it out, especially you, Mike and Eleanor, because you're not too young. You need to figure it out.
Next 3 speakers, Mary Anthony, Patty Kay, and Sandra Martinez.
Good evening. I am speaking tonight because I was at last month's meeting. That evening, I knew what to expect, but I was still shocked and saddened at what I heard. To the students who spoke that night, I want to tell you, you are and were awesome for your courage, your compassion, and your honesty. We all know that books are tools for understanding complex issues. Limiting young people access to books does not protect them from life's complex and challenging issues. School board members, I want to thank you for creating a safe place for my grandchildren, my nieces, and nephews to learn in. The environment you as board members foster will help determine if they will continue to have a safe place to learn about themselves and the world they live in, if they will open up to listening to different people's perspectives, if they will look forward to going to school each day knowing there is a safe, open, and welcoming space for them and their friends and all their beautiful differences.
Thank you.
Last month, each of the board members received a pamphlet of different books that we are trying to get removed out of the library because they are inappropriate for the students. How many of you went home and read them to your children or your grandchildren? Nobody? Okay, well, I can understand why, because it's probably the pornographic pictures, the graphic pictures that were there, and yet you allow them in the school libraries for those children, but not yours. Is that correct? Relative to this is a discussion that you had in closed session today. On the agenda was a possible litigation saying that social media is addictive for the students. If I were the opposing attorney, I would say to you school board members, what have you done to break this cycle when you have the students 6 or 7 hours a day? Before Coronado and Oceanside districts spend the taxpayers' money again, what are they doing in the classrooms? Let's do things locally here. Or are you doing anything? How much are the legal fees that are projected for this? How much of the is going to be used for attorneys rather than in the classroom from the taxpayers' money? 3, are you saying that social media is the cause of failing grades? Is the social media, are you blaming for these failing grades? In science, when we are trying to prove a theory, we have to consider all the variables. Are you eliminating the variables and to prove your theory that it's social media? Are you eliminating the cell phones in the class? I don't think so. Are you asking parental cooperation?
Thank you.
With limiting
Thank you, Patty.
social media?
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Oops. Is it on? Yeah. We all want success in life for our children. We all want Oceanside schools to be a place where parents are confident, proud, and feel safe to send their children. The pillars of success are the ability to read, write, and do math. The educational system measures its own success by test scores. The test scores for OUSD are extremely poor, with less than 87% proficiency. Clearly, something is very wrong unless you're trying to create a slave class. The school curriculum requires a large amount of time be spent on non-academics. Those programs appear to focus on emotions and the differences between students. Focuses on feelings doesn't guarantee steps to success or happiness. In fact, it hinders it. Emotions are survival tools, as fear helps you run faster away from a bear that's chasing you. But when emotions become the focus of how one lives, that person is now the tool and the servant of the emotions that control them. One has to learn to accept and deal with criticism in painful situations. Only then can a person grow into a balanced and thoughtful adult. Focusing on basics creates a common bond between students through learning. Going through difficult times together, like learning a skill, is what truly unites people. Over the past months, people have spoken with concern about the early sexualization of children in schools, from books available to teachers sharing their personal sexual proclivities and preferences and hiding student information from parents. Parents have a right to be concerned. So instead, why don't we create strong, confident children who know how to turn adversity into victory? Let's create a solid foundation of basics for children so they have the tools to reach their highest potential.
Next three speakers, Richard Newton, Meta Riojas, and Graham Frazier.
I'd like to begin by first thanking you for showing the first speaker who spoke the courtesy of going over 2 minutes. You didn't cut her off at 2 minutes and 1 second. I notice, though, that seems to be contingent upon whether or not you are sympathetic to the speaker. It's ironic, given that you stress equity as being a value, that you act like petty tyrants and cut people off if you don't agree with them. A few thoughts on what was said tonight. If you want to increase test scores, why not make teachers' raises contingent upon improved performance of students? Radical concept. Don't give them raises automatically. Do you ever stop to consider an item and maybe vote it down and then do it right later? I just witnessed tonight that you could have bought laptops for $1,000 a piece, and you voted 5-0. You continued blindly to approve this policy and pay over $2,000 for laptops, wasting taxpayer money. And it's always 5-0. I have a question. Has there ever been a vote other than 5-0? Has there ever been a 4-1? Nope, there has. Okay, I haven't seen it. I've seen very, very many 5-0s. I don't know what the dysfunction is here, but it is clear that you are all indifferent to the concerns of parents and citizens and taxpayers, and to the quality of education and the educational product you produce. Why is there never debate? If all of these items are approved 5-0, then somebody's made the decision to put it on the agenda and to rubber stamp it. You all act as rubber stamps, mindless rubber stamps. Why is there never discussion among you in public? For example, the laptops. Why didn't any of you say, you know what, let's pause on this item, maybe we can save the taxpayers money? That's pretty pathetic. It really is. It's truly a shame, and a glaring example of the arrogant and indifferent bureaucrats at work. Anyway, that's all I got to say.
Okay. Ms. Vitale, to set the record straight, we are all parents of students in the Oceanside School District, and we are the voice of the parents of the people of Oceanside. Okay, so you all were elected to represent people of Oceanside. You will be removed by those citizens because you continue to allow dysfunction and malpractice to occur in this district. Earlier, it was said that you basically have two fiduciary duties: is to make sure a school district remains solvent and to ensure children are learning and not falling behind. This district has failed on both accounts. Excuse me. You are more interested in advocating for pedophilias to indoctrinate and rape the minds of our innocent children. California law may protect you, but the Constitution is supreme, and parental rights are holy, which were engraved in our Constitution by our founding fathers. So, is this a constitutional battle you want to place this school district under? Concerned parents and allies of Oceanside would like to meet individually with board members who are willing to question and not to continue to be a board captured by the cultural Marxist in the teachers' union. If you are willing to listen to us and stop the sexualization and undermining parental rights and promote educational excellence, we will support you. And if not, we will primary you or recall you. It is apparent we have many intelligent people in our Oceanside community willing to step up and due to the outcry from our parents here in Oceanside. So I would urge you to take the opportunity to meet with us, or we will exercise our constitutional rights and we will turn over the Oceanside School Board. Ms. Vitelli.
Graham Frazier.
To their church. They don't have kids here. They have a school in their church.
We should put these meetings on a bit early so us old guys can, not fall asleep.
You gotta hold it.
I think you have to hold or get closer to it.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to take G first, legal counsel. The fact that this was under the closed session, I can understand when the board is being, or the district's being sued coming from the outside, but my understanding that this particular one is the district is actually suing some of the media. Is that correct? So I was wondering why this, at least the initial part of this, this is again cost to the district. I'm not saying this is, it's a good thing. I think that's being, there's pushback against the social media, but is it the job of the school district to do it? Again, I'll get back to what the main thing is. It seems to me there's no opportunity is missed to sort of go down a sidetrack that's not related to the main thing, which is educating kids. Now, if you feel this is a critical thing in educating kids, why don't you just stick to the basics? I just think this should have been on the agenda and an assignment of funds for this, because this, I don't know how much it's going to cost. Is this costing any money, or is this all free? Nothing. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, if you're getting this for free, I say I applaud you. Okay, thank you. The other one was expulsion of students. And I'm aware of the directives for restorative justice and community, getting the kids not being expelled. And I think, there's great merit in that. However, on the other side, I'm thinking, gee, if you keep the...
Sorry, Mr. Graham. You're out of time.
I'm out of time?
Point. Yes,
all right.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Frazier, Sue LeClaire, and Angelica Perez.
Go for it, Ann.
Smile? A joke? I don't tell. Oh, come on. Okay.
Good luck.
Thanks. I'm here tonight.
Hold it up close to your mouth.
I'm here tonight because I'd like to meet with Miss Alvarez. I've been trying to no avail. I've been told that my husband is one of the reasons why, Professor Fraser. I'm married to him 57 years. I'm not about to give that up. I put up with that for 57 years. I can't give up on that. I've been told I sit with people from my church, parishioners. I'm one of them. I'm an individual. I'm an individual. I want to meet with my representative. Okay? That's all I want. I have some material to hand in, and that is 5 of these requests for reconsideration of material. They're not been vomited on, they're clean. I vomited on the books I read. I had to look up when I looked at these books to my grandparents, my grandmothers in heaven, and ask for forgiveness. I haven't seen anything like that. I didn't look at porn. God bless the children of the United States, of the Unified School District in Oceanside, and God bless all of you. I pray for you. I do. Okay? I'm an individual. These books are just, they're not good. I want to meet with you, please, my representatives.
Okay. We'll talk after, but your time is unfortunately up at this time.
I can't hear you.
Your time is up, but we will speak after the meeting shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
very much. Smile. Come on.
Good evening. I would like to address the accusations directed at the students who spoke at the meeting. They were accused of not thinking for themselves and just parroting what their teacher said. I am a parent of one of those students. Let me make it very clear that the comments made by the students were of their own making. They decided whether or not they wanted to participate, selected the book to read, and came to their own conclusions, as seemed obvious since they presented different views. I also want to make you aware that as 2 of the students went outside to meet their parents, one man associated with some in this group approached them and started asking them if they were forced to say what they said. The students were confused, but told the man that no, it was their choice. He said he didn't believe them. Let me say how inappropriate I think it was for a grown man to approach some students when they were alone and accuse them of lying. People here say they want to protect the students, yet they tried to intimidate them and create a conspiracy theory about teachers forcing students to say things at a board meeting. Other people approach the students under the pretense of thanking them, but then accuse them of supporting criminals and communists. These adults should be ashamed of themselves. I am proud of all the students who spoke and thank them again for their well-articulated arguments. I also want to say that if people here are really concerned about student safety, they should know that gun violence is now the #1 cause of death of children in the U.S., as made glaringly clear in the most recent school shooting. I believe the school district should promote safe storage of guns in students' homes. Every year, approximately 350 children gain access to a gun and unintentionally shoot themselves or someone else. Over 700 teens die by gun suicide every year. Safe storage could prevent these deaths. The proliferation of guns is a crisis in our country, and I hope that we can work together to reduce the impact of gun violence on our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Angelica Perez. Excuse me. Jasmine Gayton.
Yeah, Jasmine and who else? I'm sorry. Ann.
It was Jasmine and who? I'm sorry.
Susan Custer and Allison Minion.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Gayton. I was a former student at El Camino. I wanted to make aware that there is an incident that happened with one of Oceanside's school faculty members. I wanted to recognize that I'm not really sure at this moment what the school district represents when one of its staff members commits battery upon 2 college students pursuing careers in medicine to keep the promise of an optimistic, hopeful, bright change, and it is discouraging and concerning. So we voice. Do you want to speak?
According to the California Code, Education Code EDC 45122.1, a school district shall not retain in employment a current classified employee who has been convicted of a violent or serious felony and who is a temporary substitute or a probationary employee who has not attained permanent status. My question is, when an education code and law is violated, what is to happen next? I am considered a guardian to my little brother that is still has middle school and high school to go through. I would be doubtful to continue to see someone such as herself, a member of the school district with a promise to act accordingly and teach accordingly, may be continued to oversee kids after assaulting with battery 2 college kids.
I know that the school board is committed to the safety of all students. Therefore, I'm hopeful that something is done to protect the future conduct of students who may be taught or overseen by this staff member, which I'm going to keep confidential. I do have some documents to support the evidence and would like to present this if I can.
Okay. We'll give it to Samantha.
But again, my main concern is the children that she oversees, because she's a behavioral interventionist, but she's over here committing assault and battery on
I'm
her
sorry,
behalf.
your time is up, unfortunately, but if you'll hand your information over to Dr. Lawrence.
Susan Custer.
Start. Give me a second to get set up. Okay, so I have a few extra things to mention that I wasn't intending to mention. One of them is a fact I just happened to look up the other day. 100,000 people, young people, die every year of fentanyl, and all gun deaths per year. In the most recent year, we have statistics is 48,000. That includes accidental murder, all gun deaths. So, and many of them could be stopped with better police protection. So it's fentanyl that's killing our young people. At the board meeting last month, many high school students reported on the book Anne Frank, the graphic novel. Based on reports, this book was chosen as a means of demonstrating that the books we had reviewed were acceptable to be in the schools. Some of the books being compared to Anne Frank were Fun Home, Milk and Honey, and Gender Queer. The point seemed to be that the content in all of these books is equally appropriate or equally inappropriate to Anne Frank. I decided to read both Anne Frank, the graphic novel, and Anne Frank, the Diary of a Young Girl. I completely agree with the reports by the students last month. Based on content, there's absolutely no reason to remove Anne Frank from the school. This is not a defense, though, for keeping the sexually explicit books in our schools. Anne Frank is an historical account of life in hiding during World War II. It is not a how-to book on sex. It is the sex books that need to be removed. In this book, Let's Talk About It, which I have also read, there is a chapter devoted to telling the kids how to sexting, how to do sexting on their phone. to make sure you don't have your face or any identifying moles or scars.
Suzanne, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Your time is up, unfortunately.
Well, I had a very important thing to say about
I'm sorry.
Good evening. I wanted to bring to the attention to families at home of a book that was read at South O to my child's 4th grade class by their activist librarian, Miss Savadni, who I have also seen attend the school board meetings in support of these explicit books in our school libraries. And so this is the book here. It's I Didn't Stand Up. The book is by Lucy Falcone, and I'll read a couple excerpts from this. First, they went after Jamal, but I'm not black, so I didn't stand up for him. Then they went after Cheyenne, but my clothes aren't hand-me-downs, so I didn't stand up for her. Then they went after Jason, but I'm not gay, so I didn't stand up for him. Then they went after Alexis. She used to be Alex, but everyone knows my gender, so I didn't stand up for her. The author also states on her website, when you are black or a geek or poor or Muslim or transgender or anything different from the norm, you are a target for bullying. I was told just how uncomfortable most of those children were when this book was read. This book says it's teaching about anti-bullying when what it's really teaching is racial division, targeting social economically challenged and gender identity. So why? Why 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds need to be questioning themselves and their peers? Children do not see color. They do not see socioeconomic status or gender identity. The librarian made a wrong judgment in reading this book. It is not about anti-bullying. Let our children be children. This is terrible. And leave the sex talks up to families at home. Thank you.
Matt Ball and Jacqueline Fisher.
How's everybody doing tonight? So, if we want to talk about guns, I'm just going to be fair. You should know what you're talking about before you bring it up. If you want to point fingers at guns, I can tell you why you're wrong. But that's okay. You can mock me you can mock me all you want. But that doesn't matter. I believe in kids having a say. I really do. They should be free to say what they need to express themselves, because it's something that hasn't happened in the past. But that includes Christianity. Now, I'm an intern pastor, so yeah, I'm a little biased. But at the same time, if we're going to promote one side of the aisle, because, education should not be mixed with politics, whether you like it or not. My nieces and nephews that do attend your school board should not be mixed with politics. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. Take your beliefs, and shove it out that door, because my nephew doesn't deserve to be punished by your stuff. This ain't about you. I don't care what your beliefs are. You don't care what mine is. You really don't. As a Christian, I believe that everybody is to be loved, whether you like it or not. You don't have to like me, and I don't have to like you, but there is a thing as respect. And as it says in the Bible, love thy neighbor as you love thyself. Well, that doesn't exist anymore, because we're going to point fingers across the aisle during these meetings and say, well, somebody on that side did this. You know what? How about you grow up, act your age, and understand that whether you're Christian or not, it doesn't matter. If you want to talk about guns, we'll talk about guns. I'm an expert. But more importantly, if you're going to allow LGBTQ stuff in our school, you allow Jesus in our school too. You can't pick and choose. That's not equal.
David. Good evening, board members and all the school districts members. I am here this evening to speak about the issues my family experiencing with your district's special education policies. Students are not systematically getting the services listed on their IEP. FAPE is not implemented, and the MRE is used. We found out that my son's special day class has him in segregation without any other classmates. This is unacceptable. He is placed in the most restrictive environment and is denied any opportunity to be with his peers. He has rarely received any of his general education services. He has been isolated for long periods throughout the school day. This has caused him significant regression and fear of school. Assessors, BCBA, and parents had been denied the opportunity to observe him for meaningful periods of classroom time in violation of Ed Code 51101. He is terrified of school, and forcing him into the traumatic environment has caused him serious emotional harm. The district has not taken any meaningful steps to reduce his anguish and terror. To segregate children with disabilities in the way that your district has done is wrong. I have pulled my son out of the school since February 13, 2023, due to the many issues with the IEP. Now I am receiving truancy letters, and the district is doing nothing with the parents to address the issues on my child's IEP and emotional abuse put upon him by your staff due to the segregation and lack of proper aids and supports to have our son in an inclusive environment. The district is losing sight of what is important with children with disabilities. They are losing services and opportunities to thrive and grow to be productive members of society. I'm asking the board members to provide oversight and audit their special education department to ensure that students receive services in their IEP with fidelity. Thank you.
Thank you. And what was her name?